Take my heart, wash my soul, renew my mind and make me whole. Take my heart.
Joshua 14 verse 1. So this is Joshua, okay, and he's dividing up the land now west of the Jordan. Okay, last week we looked a lot at the allotments east of the Jordan. So now we're looking at west of the Jordan. So in verse 1, the remaining tribes of Israel received land in Canaan as allotted by Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of no mom or dad, and the tribal leaders. I couldn't help myself. I do it every time. It's just an old cheesy joke. The son of none. Get it? No mom. Okay, sorry. Verse 2. These 9.5 tribes. Now, this always confuses me. How do you get a half tribe? I mean, to me, it seems like you might have a small tribe and a big tribe, but what exactly is a half tribe? That always confused me. I mean, okay, you guys are overpopulated and you stop because you're only half tribe. I mean, how do you contain that? I always thought that was kind of a strange concept. Why don't they just call it a tribe if it's on its own right? It might be a smaller tribe, but it has to do with the blessings. We'll talk about that in a moment, just briefly though. So these 9.5 tribes. So we have 2.5. I guess the reason why is because 13 is an unlucky number, and they could have 13 tribes. So they had to divide 2 tribes in half. No, there's another reason why. But so you have 9.5 on one side of the Jordan, and you have 2.5 on the east side of the Jordan. So this is the west side, 9.5. Okay, so these tribes receive their grants of land by means of sacred lots, in accordance with the Lord's command through Moses. Moses had already given a grant of land to the 2.5 tribes east of Jordan. So Moses already because he was around when they acquired that land, and so he already gave that allotment out. So now they have to divide it up according to the system of sacred lots. Okay, but as we talked about last week, the Levites who were dedicated to serving the Lord, they had no such allotment of land. They had a different kind of allotment, which we talked about last week. The descendants of Joseph had become 2 separate tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. So here is the half tribe situation. You have Joseph, the son of Jacob, whom he loved very much. His heart was very much so torn towards Joseph, and so he gave him basically a double blessing. But in order to get away with him, he considered a half blessing. So 2 half blessing, full blessing to Joseph, but it trickles on to his sons. One was Manasseh and the other was Ephraim. That's the tribes. So Joseph's one blessing in half, Manasseh, Ephraim. So the Levites were given no land at all, only towns to live in with the surrounding pasture lands for the livestock and for their possessions. So land was distributed in strict accordance with the Lord's commands to Moses. And I had a couple comments here. Of course, I already talked about the 2.5 tribes. There was 12 tribes in total, but Joseph did not receive 2 blessings, but 2 half blessings, one for each of his son. So that's what we're seeing here. So one Joseph's sons, one east side, one of the other Joseph's sons on the west side. So, and again, just a reminder, we talked about last week with the Levites. Then they may have been poor in land, so they didn't have an allotment. So you might see them, well, poor Levites, they don't have any land. That value, that wealth is not theirs, and that doesn't seem very fair. But we looked at what their allotment was indeed probably arguably much better. Because they were spiritually rich. They may not have had much in terms of property value, but what they had was much, in my opinion, much more valuable. Their allotment was God himself, was the ministry of being with God and being an intercessory to other people in the land and representing God to the people. And even with that, God always took care of them. So there was no problems. There was no worries for the Levites. But now let's look at Caleb, because that's kind of now what we're surrounding. Because in verse 6, we start looking at Caleb. And he's a delegate, okay? So he was a leader of the tribe of Judah. This is important. Because we're going to look at his allotment. And what is it? Is it a part of Israel, or is it a part of something else? And so here we've got to remember, first and foremost, that Caleb was a leader. He was a part of Israel. Okay? He was politically a part of Israel. He was a leader of the tribe of Judah. Okay? But he was also ethnically a bit different. And that, I think, this message from this point on is going to look like one of the kind of messages I give from time to time, which looking at, how we treat people of a different ethnic background, right? And the thing is, reason why, there's prejudices. And so we got to be careful not to treat people because of where their ethnic background might lie. They might be Jewish or Arabian or Polish or Chinese or American, whatever. We treat people rightly. And I think the right way to treat Caleb here is by looking at his ethnic background, because as we see here, he's not from one of the standard tribes. He's not from one of Jacob's children. He's a son of Jephthah or Jephunneh, the Kenizzite. And we're going to look at what are the Kenizzites. Who are they? We're going to look at that. That's important because he's ethnically different. And he's allotted land as kind of a stranger, if you will, a bit ethnically different than the other Israelites. How do we treat him? So ethnically, he is a foreigner. However, he is a political citizen, if you will. He is a part of Israel. He's an advocate for Israel. He's a leader of a tribe of Israel. So there's a political Israel, but yet there's a man who's ethnically a foreigner. And as we saw in the title, it's not just any foreigner. He's a descendant of Esau. He's an Edomite. So let's go on and read. So Caleb said to Joshua, remember what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, about you and me when we were at Kadesh Barnea. Kadesh Barnea is very significant. Even to today, it's very significant. This Kadesh Barnea is still being fought over today. Okay? It's a very important plot of land. Okay, so this is where they were. And this is Caleb speaking. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land of Canaan. So remember when they saw the sky of the land, they were 40. They were quite old at that point even. And I returned and gave an honest report. But my brothers who were with me were frightened, the people, from entering the promised land. And for my part, and this is a cool thing, look at the character of Caleb. Okay, again, when we look at people, we should look at their character, not their ethnic background. This is the kind of man Caleb was. I wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. There's many who are ethnically Israelites. They were born, of the 12 tribes, and yet they were weak. We saw that when they went and they scouted. These were elders. These were supposed to be the strong guys, and they came back and they were weak. They didn't wholeheartedly trust the Lord, and they spread fear. So it's interesting how they are supposed to be the example, but this guy, this foreigner, had to set an example for the rest of the people. And so only him and Joshua were brave enough to say, let's go. Let's go take the land that God promised us. He wholeheartedly followed the Lord. And I love this. Not just the Lord my God. It's very important that individuals, no matter where they come from in the world, that individuals find God, find the Lord as their individual personal God. So you might think, well, I can't get to know God because I grew up in a country that doesn't believe in God. Well, you can. Anyone can. Or you might have the opposite problem, where, well, because I'm born in a Christian nation, I'm a Christian by default. Well, that's nonsense. There's no such thing as being a default in terms of relationship with God. There's no default. If anything, your default relationship with God is not a pleasant one, because the Romans and Isaiah and many scriptures make it very clear that we tend to be in rebellion by default. So you don't want to be in a default position with God. You want to have a personal relationship with God. You want to have a wholehearted type of relationship with God like Caleb had here. Okay. So the day Moses solemnly promised me, the land of Canaan which you were just walking. So this Kadesh Barnea, a very important part of land, they were walking around it. That will be your grant of land. And that of your descendants forever. Because he wholeheartedly followed. Not because of who he was in his background, but because as a person he wholeheartedly followed the Lord. My God. So Caleb comments, if you remember when they left Egypt, okay? So he was full in Israel, yet he's also a foreigner. So again, he was grafted in to Israel as a nation. But he had his ethnic background as a foreigner, right? This Edomite, descendant of Esau. Remember There were foreigners who joined Israel as they left Egypt. Remember, a big part of when they left Egypt, there was many foreigners, and for the most part, that caused a lot of problems for Israel. These foreigners, because they were weak-hearted. They weren't wholehearted, and they caused Israel a lot of problems. However, perhaps, and I think what we're seeing here is very clear. So I think it's more than just perhaps. Caleb was one of these fellows that came and joined Israel as they left Egypt. Him and his family, but he was not trouble for Israel at all. In fact, he was the exact opposite. He was a champion for Israel, and we see that through the scriptures. So who are these people? He's from this tribe called the Kenizzites. Who are these people? Let's look and research who they are, because we can see it all the way back in Genesis. And by the way, I would reckon to say that they were friends of Israel. See, a lot of what we're reading here, we're looking at all these people. It seems like Israel just hates everyone because they're just fighting with everyone. But they had friends as well. And the Kenizzites were friends, we could say. Genesis 15:17 says, after the sun went down and darkness fell, Abram. He says Abram, before he even became Abraham. He's receiving his vision from God. And promise is a big, important promise that he's receiving from God. So Abram saw a smoking fire pot with a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. This is a sacrifice he was making to God. And God literally is walking through it as a sign of a covenant. A promise, a one-sided promise. Abram didn't have to do nothing. He just watched as God sent this smoking fire pot and flaming torch passing between these halves of carcasses. And so the Lord made a covenant, a promise with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants. So again, this is the Canaan, this is the promised land. All the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River. The land now occupied. So who's living there? The Kenites. The Kenizzites. Again, that's the tribe where Caleb comes from. The Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, and so on and so forth, okay? We're going to see the Jebusites a little bit more later on. So make a note of that mentally. So, the Kenizzites were not the children of Israel. They're not children of Jacob, okay? But the children of Esau, the carnal-minded brother who sold his birthright. You guys remember that? You guys remember the story of Esau? How he was the carnal-minded and he sold his birthright to Jacob, to Israel? And so there's conflict, Abraham, the promise. Who gets the promise? Is it the firstborn son, Esau? Or is the secondborn son who bought the birthright, Jacob? And that's still in debate today, isn't it? Or in conflict. Not really in debate, there's more in conflict, isn't it? So Esau, the children of Esau would include this fellow, because he was a Kenizzite. In Genesis 36:9 says this. This is the account of Esau's descendants. The Edomites, that's what they're called. They're called the Edomites, who lived in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's son, Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife, and Reuel, the son of Esau's wife, Basmath. It's an awesome name. If we have a daughter, we're calling her Basmath. Sounds a lot like Batmath. Okay, or Bathmath. Okay, never mind. The descendants of Eliphaz were Tamim, Omar, Zepho, Gatam. Why are these names not still used today? These are beautiful names. And Kenaz. Okay, Kenaz, or Kenaz, whatever. He is the father of the tribe of the Kenizzites. He was a son of Esau. So you see how I'm drawing it, a very clear line back to Esau. So much of what we read about the war in Canaan, okay, what's going on right now in the book of Joshua, might suggest that Israel, and ultimately God, is against foreign people. He's a bit of a xenophobe, and they're a bit xenophobic. Oh, why are they so mean to people? However, this is not the case. In fact, in this Old Testament, there's in the law, in the Pentateuch, it's very clear about how to welcome, how to be friendly, how to let foreigners enter in. So they were told that they were supposed to be very welcoming to the foreigners and strangers. They were to let them in. They were supposed to be friendly, but the people who they were fighting are not friendly. They're enemies. They are resistant against God, His way, and His people. Okay, so the fights in Joshua, and we're going to see more in Judges and so on and so forth. This is a hostile situation, a hostile relationship. In fact, Israel did have allies and it did have friends, and I think the Kenizzites would be one of them. But Israel is also supposed to be morally distinctive, morally different. from any other nation in the area. And God wants to protect that precious characteristic of morality, because that's what also makes them special in terms of being God's righteous people. In order to be God's people, righteous people, you have to be morally distinctive. If not, there's no difference. If there's no difference, there's no God. These people lived without God, and as such, they're morally corrupt. But the Israelites were supposed to walk with God, and because God is good, they were to walk in rightness or righteousness. They were to ask questions like, how do I do right? How do I do good? How do I become a good person? Those are the kinds of questions that a person should ask in terms of a good God, if they have a relationship with him. So God wants to protect them. And it's widely believed that the whole region of Canaan, this is important, guys, I've read a lot of this in many different commentaries, that the people of Canaan, they were morally corrupt, as bad if not worse. And there's a lot of examples that are really quite gruesome I don't want to get into, and we hinted on it before. The gruesome practices of these people, it is vile, and they compared to, or even suggested to be even worse, morally speaking, than Sodom and Gomorrah, which was completely wiped out. And we see some of how corrupted they were in the scriptures. If you want to go back and revisit, please do. Back in Abraham's day. So if this is true, then what this actually shows us is the spread of wickedness amongst people is fast and it's dangerous. So something to think about even in modern context about what we let into our TV, our YouTube channels, our radios, our conversations. Wickedness spreads like wildfire. We need to protect ourselves. So the next slide. Caleb. I call this slide Peace in the Middle East. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? So here we go. Joshua 14. This is us continuing our story. This is now us in verse 10 of chapter 14. So this is Caleb speaking. Now, as you can see, the Lord has kept me alive. So again, we know Caleb and his background, don't we? And we know the promises that Moses gave him. So now we can see the Lord has kept me alive and well, as he's promised, for all these 45 years since Moses made this promise. Even while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Today I'm 85 years old. Okay, get that, guys. He's 85 years old. And I am as strong now as I was when Moses sent me on that journey. What did he do? What did he eat? What was his exercise? You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, guys. We need exercise. We are so soft. Oh, my big fat belly's in the way. Oh, my back. Oh, my head. Oh, my knee. Oh, my this. Oh, my that. And the thing is, shame on the Western world, the way it's, what's it called? A sedentary lifestyle, sitting on our butts lifestyle, and that's it. The thing is, they didn't have that. Caleb, he walked and walked and walked. He was strong. He probably ate a crazy healthy diet. 85 years old, and he's still as strong as he was when he was 40. Which is a lot healthier than I am in my 40s, I'm sure. And I'm honest with you guys, I'm just as bad as you guys are. So, it's a shame on us, I guess. So, he's strong now as he was when Moses sent me on the journey. And I can still travel. So, he's able to basically walk long distances and fight. Not just travel, but fight battles at 85. Okay, so give me the hill country that the Lord promised me. Okay, when we talk about that land that he promised them, the hill countries. You remember that as we scouted, we found, now this is even more insane. That hill country he's talking about, this is the precious hill country that they were in love with, but they were afraid of. He wants that. He's, I like that. I want that. That's beautiful plot of land. The hill country. Well, you remember we scouted it out, and we found those descendants, those giants, again, back to the Anakim, the big giant people, descendants of the Nephilim, living there in great walled towns. But if the Lord is with me, I will drive them out. At 85 years old, he's going to go fight giants. What a man. Just as the Lord said. Again, but his confidence isn't in his own strength, really. I think his confidence is in God and what God can do for him, what God has done through him. And so I think he's just at 85, it's in the system. It's in the clogs. It's hardwired in him. He's lived his whole life trusting in God, having complete, wholehearted faith in the Lord, his God. So now it's just hardwired in him. He's 85. He can't teach an old dog new tricks. He's like, as far as he's concerned, bring it on. Bring me some flame giants and some dragons and some, name it. Bring, Behemoth himself and Leviathan. I'll fight them all with my bare hands. Because he's hardwired. He knows that with God, anything's possible. So, big deal about giants. I'll go down there and punch him in the head. Get out. This is mine now. God gave it to me. Don't you know that? Bravery. So, Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave Hebron. This is a modern day city in the West Bank. Quite a significant town. In fact, they were the president of Israel early 1950s, 60s, made a comment about conflicts in the West Bank. And he says, we're not interested in the West Bank. What we're interested in is Hebron. It's a very important town. Second, probably only to Jerusalem itself. Why is that? Why is Hebron so important? I'll tell you why. It's where Abraham lived, and it was where all the patriarchs were buried. It's a very important town in terms of the history of people. And so they don't want to let it go. But it's interesting to see who it belongs to. Does it belong to Israel? Politically speaking, yes it does. Because Caleb was a leader of Israel. He was the leader of the tribe of Judah. But does it belong to a person who's ethnically an Edomite from the son of Esau? Yes is the answer to that as well. So yes is the answer to both. It belongs to Israel and also belongs to Caleb, who's a descendant. It's an interesting question. That's why I believe there's conflict. Is because it's like they're confusing the political with the ethnicity. So here we have Hebron. Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, was given Hebron to him as a portion of land. Hebron still belongs to the descendants of Caleb. Son of, again, he keeps bringing it up, Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, the Edomite, the descendant of Esau. It was given to him by Moses, by Joshua, because he has been called, because he wholeheartedly followed the Lord. And that, I think, is the most important part. So is it really about politics? Is it really about ethnicity? No, I think it has to do with the character of a person. He was given this because he was devoted to God. And if a person, whoever deserves Hebron, whoever deserves Jerusalem, whoever deserves any part of any land, should be people, a person with a whole heart devoted to God. So I don't care what your national identity is, what your ethnic identity is. This is God's land. And if you look at what Paul said in terms of land, Paul says it doesn't matter. It's a spiritual thing. It's all spiritual. Paul spoke, when he spoke about Israel, and he talked about, land, and even Jesus, when he was asked the question about where do we worship, on this hill or that hill, what did he say? We're to worship God in spirit and truth. It's a spiritual, it's just a bit of land. It doesn't matter. It's a bit of history. But what has it done to you? How are you spiritually any better because of what happened here in this land 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago? If you're hard-hearted, if you're resisting God, then having this land makes no difference whatsoever. But if a person who has a right heart has a land, then that's a blessing. That's wonderful. But it's not really about land. It's about a spiritual heaven. God, worshiping him in spirit and truth. Knowing him and knowing him right. And that's why. So it doesn't really matter that he was a son of a Kenizzite, a son of Esau. It doesn't matter that he was a political military leader of the tribe of Judah, of Israel. What matters is that he wholeheartedly followed the Lord. That's important. So we meet people. Let's not look at them in terms of who they are, where they come from, but in terms of do you wholeheartedly follow God or not? That's important. And then the land had a rest from war. That's the reason why I call it peace in the Middle East. Because the land finally had a rest from war. So here's a map. Joshua 15:1. The allotment for the clans of the tribe of Judah reached southward to the border of Edom, as far south as the wilderness of Sin. And this is just to kind of zoom in. The map didn't go that far down, but it goes down and around as far as to Egypt. And this is the southern bits, traditionally called Judah. Even later on, the kingdom was divided. You had Israel to the north, so Dan and Benjamin onwards up would be called Israel. And then Judah was normally referred to as the southern kingdom, which would be Judah and Simeon. And then there's Hebron right there. That's the land that was allotted to to Caleb. And then, of course, in Joshua 15, it reads a lot like, like I said, title deeds. So we're going to miss a lot of that out. I'm going to pick up on some verses that are more important. Here's an interesting story. Lovely story. After talking about Caleb in his allotted land, we're going to move on to a lovely story. Caleb and his love for his daughter. And we're going to meet a very interesting fellow today. This is Caleb's son-in-law. He's a very interesting guy. We're going to look at him today as well. Othniel. Anyways, Joshua 15:13 says this. The Lord commanded Joshua to assign some of Judah's territory to Caleb. Okay, yes, they're reminding us that yet again. So Caleb was given the town of Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, which had been named after Anak's ancestor. So Arba, Anak, he's a leader or a god or some kind of important figure, this Arba guy in this ancient tribe. So Caleb drove out the three groups. Okay, again, he's 85. He drove out three groups of the Anakites, descendants of Shea, Hyman, and Talamai, the sons of Anak. So these large people. From there, he went to fight against the people living in the town of Derbe, formerly called Kiriath Sephir. And then Caleb said, I will give my daughter Aksa in marriage to the one who attacks and captures Kiriath Sephir. Othniel, son of Caleb's brother Kenaz, was the one who conquered it. So Aksa became Othniel's wife. It's quite a romantic story, isn't it? Come and help me defeat, capture this town. Whoever does it will get the hand of my daughter. And then Othniel shows up. I will do it. So then when Aksa married Othniel, she urged him to ask her father, or he urged her, one or the other. Some of the translations disagree with this, but regardless, it was suggested that they would ask Caleb for a bit more. And as she got down off the donkey, I think this is the picture we saw earlier. So she got off the donkey, Caleb asked her, what's the matter? What's going on? So she said, give me another gift. You have already given me land in the Negev. Now please give me springs of water too. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. I think it's just a sweet story. There's not much as far as things to draw out that are significant, except for the fact that he had love for his daughter and he cared for her. And this is really quite, sweet. But I think, again, the concept of who Caleb had for a son-in-law, for her wife. And look at his attitude. He wasn't happy just that any guy would have his daughter. I think that's kind of important to think about. Again, talking about how he was generous and he gave him the springs of water and the lamb. But it was important to Caleb that his daughter, who he loved very much, married a man who has got integrity. And let me tell you, I think that's great. If you have a daughter, make sure that she does not settle. Make sure she marries a man with integrity, a man who knows God. I think that's what Caleb did. But how do we know that Othniel was a man of God? Do you guys know anything about him outside of this? Well, I happen to. I want to look at his character and prove that he was chosen rightly. Caleb chose a good man for his daughter. There he is. It's a photograph I took of him. I met him in real life. He's still out there in the desert. He became a desert father. That's a mighty beard right there. Okay, so here's Othniel. More than just a descendant of Esau. Again, remembering us that he is yet another descendant of Esau. But he also taught Israel to worship God again. He was the very first judge. This man that he chose, that Caleb chose for his daughter, became the very first judge of Israel in the times of trouble. Okay, so Judges 3:7, the Israelites did evil. Is that horrible? Joshua ends, the next book, the next historical chronological book is Judges, and we already see that Israel is doing evil inside the Lord. How sad is that? So they forgot the Lord? What was that? They forgot. I love the way words are used. Oops. It's like misplacing your keys or something. Remember, wasn't there someone that actually rescued us from Egypt and helped us defeat all the empires of Canaan? Who was it that helped us? I think it was this idol over here. You know what I'm saying? How do you forget God? But guys, our culture forgets God a lot. So Israel forgot the Lord, and they served images of Baal and Asherah. These big part of the corruption in ancient Canaan is these false idols, or their proper idols, the false gods, Baal and Asherah. And I'm not going to talk about them, but they're disturbing, very disturbing. So the Lord burned with anger against Israel. So in Judges, right after Joshua, they forget. But when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, the Lord raised a rescuer. So this man that Caleb chose for his daughter was a rescuer. He was a hero, a man of integrity. He came to save the people of Israel. And his name was Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother, Kenaz. So there's no doubt who this man was. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. So this descendant of Esau, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. And he became Israel's judge. Now, nowadays, God's Holy Spirit comes upon people in a very free way because of Pentecost. Because of what Jesus has done, he allowed God to interact with us spiritually in a more direct, fuller way. But before that, when God's Spirit did something like this, it was a very unique thing. So again, this man, Caleb's son-in-law, this descendant of Esau, was a man who taught Israel to stop it. You're being naughty. You need to worship God again. And he was a rescuer. So again, this message today was a great deal a part of not treating people because of their ethnic background and who their moms are, their dads are, and who their ancestors are, or what country they come from. It's about wholeheartedly following God. Caleb wholeheartedly followed God, and he was a good guy. He deserved that land. And then, of course, he chose a husband for his daughter, and he chose wisely. A man who yet was a foreigner, but yet wholeheartedly served God and taught Israel how to worship God, again, because they forgot. So, another slide. I thought I was finishing up here. It's a quick one. An application one. So this is the end, Joshua chapter 15, verse 63. Now, the tribe of Judah could not drive out the Jebusites. But I told you we're going to talk about these guys as well. The Jebusites. They're the original inhabitants of Jerusalem. Another important. So we have Hebron, an important town. And we also have Jerusalem, an important town. And so the Jebusites lived in the city of Jerusalem. So the Jebusites lived there among the people of Judah. They were unable to remove them. It wasn't until David showed up, and David had a passion for Jerusalem, that he was able to capture it and retrieve it from these Jebusites. So about 400 years later, we have in 1 Chronicles 11:4, then David and Israel, and all of Israel, went to Jerusalem, or Jebus, as it used to be called. There the Jebusites, the original inhabitants of the land, were living. The people of Jebus taunted David, saying, "You'll never get in here." But David captured the fortress of Zion, which is now called the city of David. David had said to his troops, "Whoever is first to attack the Jebusites will become commander of my armies." And Joab, the son of David's sister, Zeruiah, was first attacked. So he became the commander of David's army, or David's armies. David made the fortress his home, and that's why it is called the city of David. He extended the city from supporting terraces to the surrounding area, while Joab rebuilt the rest of Jerusalem. So an interesting bit of information here, because again, Jerusalem's an important town, but it laid occupied even after Joshua's conquest. Interesting bit of information, I think. It wasn't until David had a passion for Jerusalem. He loved Jerusalem. He wanted Jerusalem, and he conquered it. So now we're at the end. So our application is this. I say this: be like Caleb. He's a cool guy. Be strong. Take care of your body. Be strong at 85. Don't be afraid of being different. Okay, that's all right. Caleb was different, but what made him special and unique wasn't that he was different. It was that he followed the Lord wholeheartedly, and that was very, very important. So again, wholeheartedly follow the Lord your God. Make him your Lord, or make him the Lord your God. I like that. It's a good concept. Because I always see that the Lord in this redefined. Because we talk about the Lord, like, the man upstairs, as it were, or a deistic God. Oh, the Lord, there's a God somewhere, but is that Lord your God? Because we all have gods. We all have things that we cherish and love and adore, right? But is the Lord, the one who created the heavens and the earth, is he your God? Is he the one that you cherish? So that's interesting, isn't it? Let's pray.